Thank you for joining our presentation titled Integrating Engaging Practices in the Classroom to Support Mastery of Scarborough's Reading Growth Skills. My name is Taylor Oldfield-Jackson, and my co-presenter is Dr. Erin Marsano. We have three main objectives for this presentation today. First is to define the purpose of Scarborough's reading rope and explain how the skills represented by each strand of the rope lead to skilled reading. Throughout this presentation, we will give you strategies that are aligned with the science of reading research that support K-5 student improvement in the skills defined by Scarborough's reading rope. Lastly, we hope that at the end, you can design a lesson to support student improvement in skilled reading through the strategies you've seen here.
In current research, there is not one unifying definition of literacy. Literacy can have multiple meanings and is context and culture specific. One example of a holistic definition is from the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization 2018. Literacy is defined as the ability to identify, understand, interpret, create, communicate, and compute using printed and written materials associated with varying contexts. Literacy context can change, meaning that a person could have cultural literacy, technological literacy, financial literacy, civic literacy, or many other types of literacy. With this in mind, it is important to understand that there are underlying skills necessary to be literate. These are the ability to read, write, speak, and listen in a specific language and culture. Literacy develops in stages and progresses on a continuum throughout life. Learners progress through the continuum, which helps them navigate and participate in their community, culture, and society which they are a part of. Keefe et al. 2011 shares that all people are capable of acquiring literacy skills and that literacy is considered a human right. All teachers have the responsibility to support students in progressing on their literacy continuum, regardless of grade level and content area being taught. Opportunities to develop literacy should be embedded in daily content-specific activities. Teachers in every content area and grade level have the collective responsibility to support literacy development. Teachers must develop the knowledge and skills to support literacy development for students in different stages of literacy development. Pinnell and Fountas 2007 share several connections in language and literacy that are important to consider. Students learn by talking. Teachers must engage students in conversation that is grounded in a variety of texts, those that students read, hear read aloud, or write, and that expands their ability to comprehend and use language. Reading, writing, listening, and speaking are interrelated. Students need to process a large amount of written language. Dynamic language and literacy instruction should provide daily opportunities for students to read text of their choice independently, read more challenging instructional material with teacher guidance, and to hear teacher-selected and grade-appropriate texts read aloud. The ability to read and comprehend texts is expanded through talking and writing. Students need to acquire a wide range of ways to write about their reading, and also to talk about texts with the teacher and other students. Learning deepens when students engage in reading, talking, and writing about texts across many different instructional contexts. Communication is contextual. Each mode of communication provides a new way to process the ideas learned. Language and literacy are sociocultural. The sociocultural perspective of language and literacy emphasizes that both language and literacy are involved in human development and learning. Language and literacy reflect ideologies, values, beliefs, and social practices. There are several frameworks that share a progression for student literacy development. 2 frameworks will be discussed. Diagnostic Teaching of Reading by Barbara Walker, 2011, shares the 5 stages of literacy development that occur in schooling. These stages include emergent, early developing, strategic, and complex. Each stage has unique characteristics or key understandings that distinguish each of them from the other stages. In the emergent stage, typically begins at a young age when students encounter literacy in social situations. They learn to communicate using oral language and situational context. To read in this stage, they must infer meaning or printed words. During this phase, Walker emphasizes that students associate oral language with its written equivalent. In the early developing stage, it typically begins in first grade and continues into second grade. In this stage, students use patterns in words and patterns in stories to extend their understanding of literacy. Students are focused on textual information and place effort in understanding the text. The developing stage is when students begin to increase understanding of more challenging sentence structures and use them to figure out more sophisticated text. As sentence structure becomes more complex, students focus on predicting sentence meaning to increase fluent reading of words and phrases. This phase typically occurs at the end of second grade through fourth grade. The strategic stage usually begins in the middle of the fifth grade and continues through middle school. At this stage, texts are more difficult and present increasingly complex ideas. Learners begin to have more complex thoughts and begin the ability to work through higher level and metacognitive skills. The complex stage is when learners use both reading and writing to construct and reflect on meaning. In this stage, students are developing the ability to link information from a variety of sources and cross-check information. They begin to understand multiple perspectives and are increasingly reflective. Learners also have the ability to use reasoning skills in this stage. It is important to remember that each student passes through the phases at a different pace and a different time. The text further shares that literacy is impacted by prior knowledge, as well as the strategies that students utilize within each literacy event and in each phase. Another framework was created by Shaw in 1996, who developed 6 specific stages of reading development. Stage 0, the pre-reading or pseudo-reading stage, is when the learner is becoming familiar with language, letters, and sounds. The learner gains control of oral language and still relies heavily on pictures and text. They analyze word similarities, make predictions, and begin to recognize familiar written words. Stage 1, the initial reading and decoding stage, is when the learner is becoming aware of the relationships between sounds and letters and can begin to apply knowledge to text. The learner understands the alphabetic principle and alphabetic code. The reader begins to use decoding and can break the code of print. Stage 2, the confirmation and fluency stage, is when the learner begins to confirm the knowledge acquired in previous stages and begins to gain fluency and skills. Decoding skills continue to develop. The reader has the ability to determine meaning and concepts in print and uses them interactively. Stage 3, the reading and learning stage, is when the learner has enough reading skill to gain new information, often resulting in a change of motivation for many readers. Vocabulary development increases as a result of exposure to written word. Stage 4, the multiplicity and complexity stage, is when the learner has the ability to analyze text and understand multiple points of view. This allows readers to think and respond critically to text. Stage 5, the construction and reconstruction stage, is when the learner has the ability to read selectively and form opinions about what they read. The reader continues to develop the ability to construct and reconstruct knowledge. Students will typically develop these skills within the age ranges listed. However, there are circumstances when students are slower or faster in their reading development. Also, due to various reasons, there are times when a student may not master the skills required within a specific stage. The science of reading is a comprehensive, interdisciplinary body of research that encompasses collective knowledge from many fields, including science, neurology, education, and developmental and educational psychology. This collective body of knowledge, known as the science of reading, has demonstrated the skills required to help students progress through the stages of literacy development. Go and Tumner's Simple View of Reading and Hollis Scarborough's more recent Reading Rope defined the skills required to become a skilled reader. The science of reading helps us to understand the cognitive processes that are essential for reading proficiency. It describes the development of reading skills for both typical and atypical readers. Comprehension is the ultimate goal for reading. According to Go and Tumner, 1986, it is driven by two broad skill sets that are identified in the simple view of reading. Decoding text refers to recognizing words in text and sounding them out, where comprehension of language is the ability to understand language. This leads to comprehension, or the ability to read and gain meaning from what was read. The simple view of reading is further detailed in Scarborough's Reading Rope, which highlights the essential components of reading. Scarborough's Reading Rope was created by Hollis Scarborough and identifies specific skills in language comprehension and word recognition. Similar to the simple view of reading, it has two main skill sets required to reach skilled reading: language comprehension and word recognition. Language comprehension is broken down into 5 strands: background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literary knowledge. Background knowledge connects new knowledge to prior learning. Access to background knowledge helps us make sense of new ideas through past learning and experiences. Accessing background knowledge supports a reader in making sense of what they're reading, particularly when early readers are still working on decoding. Readers rely on background knowledge to attend to and make sense of what they're reading. Vocabulary is the second strand. An extensive vocabulary supports readers in making sense of what they're reading. Further, a strong vocabulary also allows readers to more easily use context clues to make meaning when they have not seen words or phrases in print before. Language structures, like syntax and semantics, is the third strand. Syntax is the arrangement of words or phrases to create a sentence. The English language has patterns and rules for the way that we use our words. Having knowledge of these patterns and the allowable flexibility within these patterns can improve literacy. Semantics. Within linguistics, semantics is the study of the meanings of morphemes, words, phrases, and sentences. It is the meaning of words, phrases, and sentence structures that influence understanding and improved skill reading level. Verbal reasoning is the fourth strand. Having the ability to make inferences or a conclusion drawn from facts, or create understanding from metaphors, are the needed skills to reach skilled reading. And the final strand in language comprehension is literary knowledge. This includes print concepts like letters versus words, correspondence, reading left to right and top to bottom, the spaces between written words and parts of texts. And it also includes genres of literature. That's different types of books, stories defined by characters, and how they're used. The next main skill set in Scarborough's Reading Rope is word recognition. It includes phonological awareness, decoding, and sight recognition. Phonological awareness is a set of skills that includes identifying and manipulating units of oral language, parts of sounds, words, syllables, and rhymes. Decoding, which is the second strand in word recognition, is the ability to apply knowledge of sound-letter relationships, or phonics, to correctly pronounce words. And sight recognition is the third strand within the word recognition skill set. Our sight word memory, or orthographic lexicon, are all of the words that we can read accurately and effortlessly from sight. These skills outlined in Scarborough's reading rope are foundational to literacy. Using Scarborough's research, we can identify evidence-based best practices to help students develop the skills associated with strong, skilled reading. We will share several strategies that align to the Science of Reading framework to support skilled reading. The first set of strategies includes teaching phonemic awareness in Scarborough's word recognition category. Research tells us that efficient foundational literacy skills begin with the building blocks of words, or phonemes. We will share an engaging way to identify, separate, and blend phonemes. This set of strategies would be used in the early phases of literacy development. The first strategy is identifying and separating phonemes in an engaging way. For this strategy, you will need a set of letters and a set of small rectangular magnets, which represent phonemes. While the example is done with a magnetic letter board, which was made by the company Foundations, the strategy could be modified to use printed letters or a virtual set of letters on a slide or a Jamboard. In the first strategy, the teacher would ask the student to listen to the number of sounds or phonemes heard in a given word. Students will move the small rectangular magnets to represent each sound they hear in the word. For example, if we use the word dog, a simple CVC word, we can hear the sound d, a, g, or 3 sounds. The teacher would ask the students to move the small white magnets to represent the sounds they hear. At this point, the teacher would check for understanding and make sure that each student has the 3 white magnets placed correctly on the board. From there, the teacher would ask the student to move the sounds they hear from the letterboard to sit atop of the rectangles. Once the sounds are segmented, the teacher would check for understanding by looking at the board and asking students to chorally read back the word. First, slowly, d, a, g, then more quickly, dog. Here is another example using the word in. And the final example using the word that. Once students feel comfortable with the idea of the white rectangles representing the sounds they hear, a teacher can work on substituting the sounds to make new words. A teacher could substitute beginning, middle, and ending sounds to create new words. Using the dog example, a student could substitute the G ending sound with a T to create dot. For example, the teacher might give the instruction, now that you have the word dog on your board, substitute 1 letter to make the word dot, dot, and give students the opportunity to exchange the ending letter sound to create the new word. Here is another example, only now substituting the middle sound from dog to dig. Another strategy to support students in blending phonemes is by using a fun item like a car or a ball to help them blend. As the car's front wheels reach the letter, the student says the sound, first slowly, then progressively increasing the speed. D, a, g. The teacher rolls the car more quickly again. Dog. Then again, more quickly until the student blends the phonemes together. This can also be done with a small ball, but the timing is harder than the car. Here is a quick clip of how this might look, only the student would say the sound of the letter as the front tires roll under. The next set of strategies is building background knowledge and vocabulary in the language comprehension strand of Scarborough's rope. Information is stored in our memory in many forms, including images, sounds, smells, and experiences. Instructional strategies that help students develop memories using more than one modality are intended to stimulate the brain in new ways, which helps increase understanding and develop memory. Engaging in drawing, kinesthetic activity, physical modeling, and graphically organizing are among activities that are used by teachers to help students form their own mental pictures. One great way to build vocabulary is the use of multiple modalities, seeing, saying, and moving. Using multiple modalities can support improved memory and recall. This group of strategies can be used for students in any stage of literacy development with modifications to the level of text. This set of strategies requires some leveled text. There are several websites that offer free leveled text. The level can be adjusted based on the student's ability. This can be completed whole class or small groups with varying difficulty level. In this example, we have selected a second grade nonfiction text at 560 Lexile titled Making Room for Owls That Dig by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. Once you select your text for students, develop a way to connect to background knowledge prior to reading. In the text, Making Room for Owls That Dig, it is likely that students have heard of an owl before. In this case, providing a picture of different species of owl that students might have seen can help students create images in their mind as they read. While showing two different images, one of a burrowing owl and one of a great horned owl, students could compare and contrast a burrowing owl and a great horned owl, emphasizing features and characteristics of the burrowing owl to help create context for the student while reading. Next, it is likely that some students may have a limited understanding of prairie dogs, which are mentioned in the text. To connect background knowledge to new learning, you might make a connection that prairie dogs are related to ground squirrels. This can help build context for the student. Showing an image of a squirrel and a prairie dog can help students make the connection. After creating the opportunity to make connections to background knowledge, the teacher should provide the opportunity to build vocabulary for possibly unknown or difficult words and phrases. It would be important to select these words and phrases before teaching and prepare a strategy to explicitly teach the vocabulary. In this example, we selected the words burrowing and barrels. One great way to build vocabulary is to use strategies that ask students to use multiple modalities. Using our example words, burrowing and barrels, we will demonstrate the say, move, see strategy. When completing the say, move, see strategy, the teacher would ask students to stand from their seats. Once students are standing, the teacher would ask students to chorally repeat the vocabulary word. The teacher and students should say the word together at least twice. Burrowing, burrowing. The teacher then introduces a short and simplified version of the meaning of the word and the hand motion that goes along with it. While standing, the teacher asks students to chorally say the word and the simplified definition while doing the hand motion. A teacher should model first, then ask students to do it chorally while doing the hand motion. The teacher would say, burrowing, to make a hole or tunnel, while making a digging motion with the hands. This process is repeated at least 3 times so students hear the word, say the word in definition, and do the hand motion. Once this is done, the teacher can put up an image to create further context. This would be repeated for the word barrel, and in this case, a barrel is a large circular container. It is important that students say the word and simplified meaning several times and have the movement associated with it. Finally, connecting the pieces with an image of burrowing owls in a barrel could help create further context for students as they read. Another way to further build background knowledge to create new learning is to complete a semantic map.
Building background knowledge begins with understanding student schema. According to Fleischman, schema theory suggests that schema are frameworks of thoughts that create different networks of meanings as readers connect their background knowledge and new information. For students to be successful comprehending what they have read, their schema must be able to be manipulated. Semantic maps allow for student schemas to be addressed and built upon in a bottom-up strategy. In semantic maps, prior student schema is addressed and then the new building of knowledge begins. Semantic maps are a great visual for students to see their prior schema, added vocabulary, new knowledge, and any misunderstandings. One innovative way to do this is through Canva. Canva has preset thinking maps that you can manipulate to fit your lessons and differentiate for your students, as seen in this slide. Here is where we would begin to add the student's prior schema when addressing the passage Making Room for Owls That Dig. The teacher would first ask the question, what do we know about owls? To then help the students, the teacher can add a sentence stem such as owls are when discussing their background knowledge on owls. The teacher might first add a sentence about their own understanding of owls and then allow the students to share and continue to add in schema. Vocabulary previously discussed by the teacher can then be added to the semantic map through Canva. There are several ways to continue the semantic map to help build background knowledge for students, and it's really teacher preference. For engagement purposes, though, it is suggested to add some new or interesting knowledge as the text is read aloud to students. This helps keep the students interacting with the text and creating the new schema, such as burrow owls live in holes, and burrow owls must find new homes because theirs are being taken. As Fleischman stated, schema must be manipulated for students to be successful in comprehending texts, so adding or changing schema throughout the reading is helpful. The teacher can hand over the pencil per se and allow students to type in the information, or as the students are offering the new information found, the teacher can type it in themselves. Finally, any misunderstandings must be addressed for the correct knowledge to be created into schema and for students to better comprehend the text. Under word recognition in Scarborough's reading rope in the lower strand is sight recognition of familiar words. Our suggestion for sight words in your classroom is to use a word wall and also to include different games and activities on a regular basis for your students. According to Jasmine and She Soul, a word wall is a collection of age-appropriate, high-frequency sight words. The main purpose of a word wall is for students to be frequently interacting with the words on the wall. This means new words should be added regularly, and the students should be using the word wall as a tool on an everyday basis. Using structured interactions with the word wall as well as games helps students with the effectiveness of the word wall with memorization of sight words. Don't forget, word wall should be easily readable by children, which means it should be somewhere at a face level to a majority of the children in the room.
Oh.
In this game, a child has a cube with sight words differentiated for his level. He rolls the dice, reads the word, and then writes the word. This can be done independently, at a small group table with the teacher, or even as a game in stations. Here the child rolls the word R and then writes the word R on the board.
And
In this round, the child rolled the word and then wrote the word and on the board. Games are a great way for students to engage with sight words and increase their word recognition.
We would love for you to consider what strategies you can apply in your context. Many of the strategies presented can be adjusted or modified to meet the needs of different grade levels, different content areas, and skill levels. We would love to challenge you to implement at least one research-based instructional strategy to increase opportunities and access to literacy instruction. Thank you for your time.